Okay. Well, hello, everybody. Sorry to rush you.
No, you're
put
fine.
You into
you're
this.
fine.
But this is Mother Tongue, and so the whole premise of this project is to create discussions that really put everyone in the same playing field and spot, where it's not necessarily a traditional artist talk where it's the artist speaking, but it's really where everyone can participate and discuss their own art, their own experiences, ask questions, and yeah, so again, it's just an open discussion, so whenever you want to speak, feel free to speak. And yeah, I contacted Amani. I found her Instagram randomly, and then we grabbed coffee, and yeah,
we had a nice chat.
Yeah, for sure. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Amani Williams. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, but I claim Cleveland for reasons that are not that important. I went to the Cleveland Institute of Art and got my Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Drawing in 2021, and then I just recently finished up my Master of Fine Arts from the School of Visual Arts this May. My work primarily is figurative drawings that focus on the Black female experience through the lens of my memory, but also through art history. The work that I brought for you all to scan through is some of my thesis that I finished with, but I've kind of been playing with the same themes for a couple years now.
And before we jump into everything, I think it'd be nice just go around and say your name and what you do, where you're from, so we can all get to know each other a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Do you want to start?
Sure. Hello, I'm Raza. I am from Karachi, Pakistan, and I do mainly poetry and photo and kind of film adjacent things. So, yeah.
I'm Kutay from Istanbul, Turkey. I do painting, art handling, and artist assistant. That's it.
I'm Winter. I'm from Indiana, and I do mixed media. I do woodworking. I do custom framing.
I'm Kyle. I'm from the Bronx, and I kind of do too much.
I'm Sheila. I am from Germany. I was raised in Tennessee. I mainly right now do mixed media sculpture installation, and I also work at a hospital.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm from here, but I'm doing music in Scotland right now. I'm a harpist. I've been playing harp my whole life. But I'm here for the summer. Back home. Very fun. Nice to meet you all.
Hi, I'm Riley. I'm from over there, Brooklyn, and I'm a legal assistant.
Gotta get every perspective.
Hi, I'm Ona. I grew up in Brooklyn, just 15 minutes from here. I'm Corinne's sister. I'm an arts administrator, and I also illustrate.
And I'm Corinne. I grew up in Brooklyn. I'm in the art history world. I'm starting my master's in art history, and yeah, I created this project. Really just to meet new artists, and also just to I feel I know a lot of artists that feel they just don't really have spaces just to chat and have discussions. So just open up people's thoughts. And yeah, we decided to do this talk in Prospect Park just because we wanted to embrace the summer and have it be nice. And
yeah, it rained on us, which was truly tragic.
Yeah. But luckily today was very nice, and maybe a little bit calmer than a Saturday would be in the park, and also with Pride. Yeah.
Is everybody comfortable getting their photo taken? Take some shots?
Yeah, so just to dive in, I guess, and again, if anyone has questions for Amani, but maybe you'd want to explain a bit why we titled this talk Afrosardonic-Tongue.
Yeah, it was funny because when we were talking, Corinne had mentioned that there was something kind of humorous about my work, and I hesitated because I was I don't know if I'm doing anything funny, but I do think that there's like a mildly sardonic tone to what I do. I think that like in the titles of a lot of my work, like you'll notice in the sheet that I have like 2 titles. There's like one title that's like the emotional weight of whatever is happening in the scene, and then there's a second title that's like said kind of sardonically, talking about what I think or what I imagine other people to feel like about me or about what's happening. And I think that that sort of sharp tone has followed a lot of my work for a long time. But I think a lot of it is very like Ralph Ellison sort of like tragic comedy. It was also funny because I wanted to title this talk something really, really long, and she was like, no. Because everything that I, like my thesis title was like super, super long. I made a zine about blackface minstrelsy, and that was like super, super long. I kind of really love how text can be really confusing and overloading, but also like denote so many things. And I was saying that I don't really think that I'm like an Afrofuturist, because I think that that supposes like a kind of optimism that is like bright and shiny and like regal in a way that I don't feel about blackness or about the world. I think I feel very like skeptically, positively nihilistic. Like things don't really mean anything, but I don't think like the worst thing could happen either. And I was trying to like balance like where do I fit in that, like what kind of art do I want to be making, and like what word would describe the tone of what I'm trying to do. That was a long answer.
Well, do you want to explain a bit? You were like telling me how when you used to go into the studio, like you wouldn't really leave the studio until you left, and now it's changed where you always have to like dance in your studio.
Yeah, I do. When I was an undergrad, I was making a lot of work that was really like happy and poppy, and I was really into Robin F. Williams at the time. I still really like her work. But I think a part of it was because I had originally thought that I was going to do illustration. And in the program that I went into, you had to apply to get into your major. So you like sat for a year doing foundations, which was like basic design and drawing and sculpting. And then halfway through, it was like, okay, now you need to apply into your major. And when I had my my interview, one of the interviews, the guy was like, yeah, you should come visit us. So I was like, okay, I guess I didn't get into that major. And then the other interview with illustration, the lady was like, have you ever thought about doing drawing? And I was like, okay, didn't get this one either. And when I got rejected from all of my majors, which they had assured us would never happen, I went down to the academic affairs office, and I was talking to this lady, Jill. I only know her because I worked there later. And I was talking to her, and I was like, yeah, I like, what the fuck? And she was like, well, you could apply to be in jewelry and metals, which jewelry and metals isn't a major anymore because of the way that the school got restructured. Anyway, I was like, well, I don't want to do that. She was like, well, here's what you can do. You can either get waitlisted, you can switch back in a year, or you can pick something else. And I was like, can I pick drawing? And like she had like a list of majors that she thought other people would want to get into, and she was like, okay, I mean, I don't know if you're gonna really like it, but sure. And then I had to wait like a month, and I met with the head of the drawing department, and she was like, I don't really think you're gonna like this major. And I was like, well, I have to be in school, and if I don't get into a major, I will be in no school, so I need this to work now. And so throughout that process, I kind of switched from doing something more illustrative to something a little bit more concrete. And I think at the time I was thinking, this was like kind of during the like wave of like airbrush painting that kind of hit New York really hard a couple years ago. There's also like a lot of people who were really interested, and like it was kind of like coming out of like post-zombie formalism into something else. And like I think that things kind of got a little flat, and I think in that I got really interested, and like that's kind of when I got into feminism. But I was like, you know, doing the typical undergrad thing where I was like, this feels not like exactly the feminism I want, but it's close. And so I was making this work where I was like making a lot of jokes, and I knew that a piece was done when I thought it was really funny, and I would like audibly laugh in my studio. and that was kind of my marker of something being successful. And then when I had my senior thesis in undergrad, one of my professors, because it was like an oral defense where you had like 6 professors that you had to defend your work for like an hour in front of, and you got to pick them, so they were like my friends, and it was like a cool conversation. But in it, one of my professors was like, why do you always have to make work that's happy? And at the time I thought he was being like a detractor, but I have sat and thought about that for a long time, and I think he was trying to get me to think a little bit more broadly about my practice, not being like something that encompasses one mode of making, but like can inhabit a lot. And so when I got into undergrad, that was one of my big things, was I was like, I just want to go wherever this takes me, and I don't want to force myself to be happy. And I think that when I've made work in the studio, I've kind of honed in my technical skills to where I don't have to think as much while I'm doing stuff. And I think that the time that I'm having the most fun is when I'm like dancing in my studio, or I'll find, I went through this phase where I got really obsessed with Intergalactic by Kid Cudi, and I like couldn't stop listening to that song for like 3 weeks. And so there's like, every time I listen to it, I just think about like the certain piece that I was like working, and like the hand that I was like fiddling with while I was listening to that song. And like so much of my process now is like based through, at least the technical part of it is based through routine and music has always been like a really big part of my making process.
Nice. Does anyone maybe want to like share their routine in their studio, or do they have like a similar experience with like humor, or just like have like this like ritual?
I feel like it's funny that you said music inspires your art, because I feel like sometimes I'll see art and it'll like inspire my music. Like I feel like they go so hand in hand sometimes. I'm curious, what was your really long thesis title?
Oh, I don't know if I'll remember it off the top of my head, which is crazy because I practice it like 5 different times. Actually, no, I'm smart. I'll know it off the top of my head. In the buckwheats of hapless splendor, you and I are of a cursed people, or you will find another reason to look at the sky like you did once before. That was what it was called.
Are you into like poetry and stuff?
I write a lot. A lot of the way that I find like the scenes that I want to draw comes from writing. Like one of the pieces that I ended up like landing on, I made, I had Marilyn Minter for class, which was interesting, and she had asked me to make these. She was like, you're really good at drawing little girls' heads, you should make like 10 more of these. And so I did that, and I liked how they turned out, and I had them, and I was sitting with them for a while, and I didn't really know what to do with them, and I wasn't sure like what to land on. And it's funny because some of the people here were there when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with them, and what I was going to call them. And I had one of the titles of my pieces is like a really long piece of poetry. It's like 10 stanzas. And I wasn't going to name it that. I just was like, I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. It was untitled for a long time. And when I was building out my thesis, my professor was like, don't put text on slides. Nobody wants to see that. And so I was like, okay, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do with this poem now. And so I was like, maybe I'll just mash these 2 things together. I also really like Kara Walker's work, and a lot of her work has these like exceptionally long ass titles that end up getting painted on the walls of like the galleries or the institutions, like Fons Americanas, that sculpture that she made about slavery and like the Atlantic, that has like a much longer title that was painted on the wall in the Tate. I don't like that sculpture for a variety of reasons, mostly because she forgot that the UK does have slavery. But anyway, a lot of what she does is like play with language. I also really like Lorna Simpson's older work. She doesn't do it as much now, but a lot of her work plays with language and like the usage of language. And I think being able to, like, I'm a person who it takes me a long time to figure out how I think or how I feel about a thing. I think a lot of it has to do with me being a middle child. I have 2 very dramatic sisters who are very mentally ill, so am I. And they are substantially more mentally ill than I am. And they both have been very pronounced about their feelings since we were kids. Like my older sister BJ, she was like 3 being like, this hurts my feelings. And my mom was like, something is wrong with you. And I think that because of that, it made it really hard for me to figure out what my feelings were, because I felt pressure to be the calm, quaint, productive child for my parents because they had 2 like troublemaker children. And so it created this delay where it's very difficult for me to like land on a feeling without having to like write it down. And I end up writing like a lot during the process. Like I scribble through during grad school. I would, during our lectures when they'd have visiting artists come, I would just like scribble and scribble and scribble and scribble until I figured out something that felt nice. And I like listening to other people speak while I write because it usually like gives me the words so that I can like land on something. So a lot of the writing is just me trying to figure out how I think or I feel, because I feel like it's hard, for me at least, for me to place my feelings in the moment when something is happening, especially because a lot of the work that I've made is inspired by like real moments in my actual life where like in those moments I didn't know what to do or what to feel. And some of what's happening in my practice is like me retroactively being like, oh, that was really fucked up, and like being able to process it later. And being able to do that through the practice has helped me navigate the present a little bit more. So I'm kind of like working across time. I don't know if that answered your question. That was really long. Sorry.
Is like your poem, was like the poem written like before or after the piece, or was it written like while you were making the piece? And like what is kind of the relationship to the poem and the piece, I guess?
I wrote the poem like months before.
Oh, interesting.
Like maybe like 5 or 6 months before I even like landed on that being the title. I try to have the titles kind of relate to each other for the most part. The piece that has like the super, super long title, that's the poem, I think I really liked how they interconnected because the drawings themselves are a little bit ambiguous. Like you can't really tell if these figures are like sleeping or if they're happy or if they're sad. And the poem is this long poem where I talk about like thinking back on my childhood and like not understanding, like growing up as a kid, I went to predominantly white schools, and because of that, like I experienced a lot of the like more gentle, soft, polite versions of racism before I like ended up going to a school out in the middle of nowhere and figured out the other kind. And so a lot of that poem is me thinking through like I would have never treated myself that way and like given myself the permission to think like, oh, you actually weren't supposed to be treated that way. And so when I was writing it, it was a very like emotional experience, and so I just kind of set it to the side because I wasn't sure what to do with it, and it felt like almost too vulnerable to share with other people. But what I like about the poems and like naming them these long titles is that I think it asks viewers to like engage a little bit longer, and all of the work that I feel like really drawn to in like any art setting is like even like I was really into Citizen by Claudia Rankine. I really like it. I'm one of the few people that is a defender of that. There are many people who don't like Citizen by Claudia Rankine, but I think what I really enjoy is when a piece of work asks you to like really sit and think and like forces you into a position where you have to challenge yourself. And I think in a lot of the work that I've been making, I've been trying to think about ways not only to challenge myself but to challenge viewers. Maybe not even just to be like, oh, you need to stop being racist, but like maybe in a way to be like, oh, have you actually thought about what you experienced and what that actually made you feel? And I feel like opening up the space to that, like both in written language but also like through the formal language, gives people a lot of leeway. I also think that the poetry is nice because I think that it helps sometimes soften the blow. I think that like I would consider myself to be somewhat of like a very like sharp, punchy person, and I think what I liked about this particular piece of poetry is that I think it's like me at my softest, and like when you read it you're like, damn. I mean, there's like a lot of sadness and it is like written in a punchy way, but I think that there's a part of like me trying to explain like how I was basically like abandoned and neglected by the system of community that I thought cared for me but actually didn't, looking back at it. I think there's a way that I talk about it that feels a little bit softer than some of the other titles of the work. Hopefully that answered the question.
What's also interesting about your work is that you use a lot of negative space, and that also made me feel like personally, like I could engage with your work longer, because it kind of like gave me like I can focus on the character, but then I can also just like think like by looking at the negative space, like it kind of gave this like awareness in a way. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but
no, yeah, I think that when we talked about this, I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been incorporating more and more negative space into my drawings. I think a lot of it is like on a more formal, technical level. I really do enjoy like Henry de Toulouse. There we go. And I really like Egon Schiele's prints. I think they're really beautiful. I just like really enjoy drawing, and one of the things that I've sort of been leaning on is I like the fact that drawing has this like physical weight and immediacy, and like you can feel a lot of my emotions through the line. But I also think that what I enjoy is that I think it gives people a nice amount of breathing room where it's not too overpowering. I think what I like about not always like rendering everything to the tightest resolution is that I think that it's like it forces people to fill in the gaps while they're viewing it, and I don't have to. And I think that it builds this trust where it's like I'm trusting you as an audience member to be able to like envision the other parts of what this thing is. I also love the fact that like with the figures, because I always allow the brightest parts of their skin to be the negative space, it kind of gives this like glowing from within, which I was kind of thinking about because I really love I love the effect of like a grisaille, and I've kind of been thinking about like ways of doing that in drawing without actually having to like paint or draw in grayscale, because I don't have time for that. And I think that what I love about the glowing from within is that like in grisailles, they make it feel like that figure is like filled with a lot of life. And I think filling the figures with a lot of life, especially in this context, is really important to me, because not only are they kind of extensions of myself and avatars of me, I think like using the language that I'm using, like pickaninny and mammy, which are like offensive terms for Black women, I think that helps highlight to people that there is this like contradiction that's happening within the work, and I'm like sort of posing a question. And I think that the negative space allows for that question to be posed. Very loud. Very excited.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like what's your like process when you're like take us like you're starting the drawing? Like, do you have a character in mind, or are you just sketching and seeing what comes out of that?
I guess I can use the two pieces that I just finished that are on my Instagram as an example. I usually have like an image in my mind of what I want something to look like. Like I always have like the perfect painting or like the perfect drawing somewhere in my mind, and it's just like the process of me getting it out, which I normally am not able to do it exactly the way that it looks in my brain. It always turns out a little bit different, but it's like this endless chasing for the thing. So it's either like I'll have words, like I'll have like a story or words that I need to like write, and then I'll start to like at one point I would write a bunch of sentences that were like, I feel this, and then I would like underline all of the verbs, and then I would like write a bunch of other sentences based on those verbs, where I was like, what do these verbs look like if I put them in like a sentence where I'm trying to imagine like a scene. And then from there I would do a bunch of sketching, and then from there I would do more sketching, and then I'd like scale up until I got to a final. That's like one process. Or recently I had these images kind of floating around in my head of what I wanted to do. When I left out of grad school, I didn't think that I would be able to make work for a long time, because when I graduated from undergrad, it took me a couple months before I like was able to really make anything that I was proud of, because I felt really burnt out. I felt like I had sort of expended all of myself on my thesis, and all of my all of my good ideas had kind of like I had wrung them all out, and they were just there to dry, and I didn't have anything else to give. And this time I ended up having a lot more like gusto, I guess, like more energy than I imagined myself to have. And so I had these images in my mind of like these two figures, and one of them was like going to be dead on the ground, and then another little girl being like shook by an adult. And I kind of was like, wow, this is kind of grim. And I felt good about doing that, because at one point in my practice I felt weird about like making drawings that were super sad. And then I went through a phase where I was making everything was really sad, and so I've kind of like found a little bit more balance. And so I had like sketched a bunch, because I was like, I don't know if I know how to draw anymore, because I had like taken some time off. Like after graduation I took like 2 or 3 weeks off, and so I was like, I don't know if my hands work. And then I was texting my sister, because I was like, oh my gosh, I do know how to draw. And I got really excited, and so I just kept sketching the same image until I found like the stride of what made sense. And then I've kind of found a good spot with my materials. Like I really enjoy using oil pastel for skin tones. I like using pan pastels for like hair or other like smaller details to soften things, and then going over top with like a pencil or something sharp to kind of like highlight the lines and the line weight. And so that was kind of the process of making it. But then I didn't have a title for it, because I couldn't think of, I just kept wanting to title like, this is how I feel like shit, but I was like, I can't title it that, because that's not like a good title. And then I landed on something long yet again that I can't remember off the top of my head. But I was like, I had sat for a while without titling it, because like, I was like, maybe something will come to me and it'll explain or like wrap all these things together. But that's like typically what my process is. It's like writing, trying to figure out how I feel, and then writing a little bit more, and then sketching what those feelings would like look like if I imagined it. In terms of the characters, because they're me, I kind of flutter between the same characters, and it's like I don't know, I feel like even naming them like Mammy or Pickaninny or Jezebel is more me just like acknowledging that like I have a role in society whether I like it or not, or like that there's an acknowledgement that happens without my consent. And I don't, like, a lot of times when people ask me about the figures, they're like, do they have names? Do they have a story? And I'm like, no. But I think it's just because they feel like such a representation of the emotional side of myself. It's hard for me to like divorce them from that and like give them like their own stories, because they don't really feel like that. And the stories that like historically they've been given, like Topsy from Uncle Tom, isn't like a good story. And I feel like I'm less interested in people like remembering their names or like knowing, like there's an audience that like definitely knows the history that I'm talking about and like will understand the second part of the title. But I also think there's room for people who don't know what those words mean to just like look at these women and these girls suffering and feel something emotional. And I think that tends to be more my priority, rather than it being like me trying to explain what these characters are or what they do or that they're bad. Because I think that like largely a lot of Black art, for me at least, it's like either like this is the most beautiful Black experience you could ever have, and then the other side of that is like, here are dead Black people. And it's not always like, I don't know, I've been saying to my peers for a while that like I can't do either of those things. I feel like I need to be somewhere in between. And I think having a space where like they can sort of inhabit the trauma of the harshness of that, but also be given a space for potentially something more hopeful, I think is more powerful and more complex and like more true to what it feels like to be a minority. I think that as a person moving through the world who is not like of the dominant culture, I think there are often moments where you're like, I really love my community, and we have this mode of resilience, we have these cultural things that are important to us. But I also, like, I feel the weight of what this identity means to other people, and that can be really, like, fucking depressing. And I think having space for both, for me, is, like, the most important thing. And I also feel like being in spaces where not everyone is Black, I think that sometimes it's hard to explain to people, like, what they mean or why they mean those things, especially because, like, the history of it is so deep, and it's, like, so, like, deeply connected. Like, even if people don't know what a pickaninny or a mammy is, they've already, like, through being exposed to, like, Western culture, like, even within European countries, they've, like, witnessed all of these archetypes through media, and it's hard to explain to people, like, no, this is, like, the source of the thing. Like, these things wouldn't exist. Like, these modes of, like, legislation or, like cultural dictation would not happen without these figures being somewhere. And I don't know, I feel like a part of me wants to be able to, like, free myself and them from the shackles of that, but also, like, understand that, like, it's really important to acknowledge that. And I feel like my practice and my work is me always trying to, like, figure out where I sit with things. That was another super long answer.
Well, we have people that are familiar with your work and then people who are new to your work, but maybe your friends, do you remember maybe engaging with Amani's work and what that was like? Do you feel like, I don't know, what has been your experience with Amani?
Oh, I'm excited for that.
Not to put you on the spot, we can also just move on.
I feel like I met Amani. She had reached out to me for a studio visit, and I felt like you either have good or bad studio visits. The bad ones for me are where we're just talking about work, and it's like kind of on the tongue. But I feel like the good ones are like when you're just hanging out and talking about like things that you're mutually interested in both of your work, and I feel like there's a good studio visit.
Yeah.
A lot of the things I've asked are probably reiterating, but we haven't so, I was recently writing something about identity.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to find it, but I can't find it. So I don't know if I was actually writing it or just thinking about it, but this idea of like what is being Black.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of work from Black artists, like you were saying, are either super romantic or super like, you know, this is it for us. But I feel like there is sort of no way to. I hold the opinion, I guess, that there's really no way to define it because it's just such an expansive. I mean, like even before like the transatlantic slave trade, like. The entire African continent is like diverse.
Yeah.
Then you separate people from their culture and kind of mix them up to find their own culture, but even in that, like different pockets are like so different. Because I feel like Black Americans are sort of defined by oppression and their government kind of just actively trying to kill them. Whereas places like Haiti are different, or Grenada.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you to just consolidate the Black experience? Like Black art is like reductive, and yeah, I think it puts it more in a cage. Like it's almost like to be qualified as a Black artist. I feel like, at least in like a contemporary art world, you have to hit one of those extremes. Whereas I feel like the best work is like, I don't know, like you're just talking about, your work reflects your life, you just happen to be Black. And I think there's an honesty there that a lot of Black kind of setting us back. I think she's going.
I think for me, so I don't really have a background in art prior to the MFA, and I think a lot of the black art that I was aware of, or was aware of, was mainly art that felt very politically charged, or almost kind of activist-y in a way, trying to make this big change. So I think being introduced to Amani in the MFA program, and then seeing Amani's drawings, was more of it showed me a different side of like Kyle was saying, it's black art, but it's art about you, and you just happen to also be black, so it's your experience. And so it was these more cinematic, story-like drawings that showed me a different side, and it was something that I could relate to, but also in some senses not relate to, just being biracial versus there's different experiences, and so that's how I felt about Amani's work when I first was introduced to it. It was a change for me of what I knew or considered of black art.
I would also argue that her work's more politically charged and activist, because it's a honest biographical work instead of a performative statement. I think of I don't know if I told you about this movie, Killer of Sheep.
No, you didn't.
It's by a really good director. It's a really good movie. But it's just, I forgot where they're at. Somewhere in the Midwest.
I think they're in California.
They're in California?
Yeah.
Okay.
But maybe I'm wrong.
Anywhere that's not New York City is the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a slice of life of this working class.
Oh, you did tell me about
Yeah.
this. We did talk about this.
And I'm this is so much more important to see than movie right now, but there's a lot of movies that I feel are so much more better to see that than Sinners.
I had to watch that movie for a film class, and I think it was the best movie that we watched in that course, because it was really interesting how that director was showing violence against the black community without actually showing violence of the black community. So you got the theme, but you didn't have this glorification. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that going off of that, I feel that's kind of what I want. Thank you both for sharing. I actually haven't heard them say this, so I didn't prepare them beforehand, so I'm excited. That's really cool to hear. I mean, I think that's what I want. It's hard to make, when I was in undergrad, one of my professors said that, the artist that you're looking for is yourself. The person who's going to fill in the gap for the work that you want to see out in the world is yourself. And one of the things that I took from that was that, I've quite literally physically needed to make work because nothing ever really scratches the itch. There's this itch in the back of my mind that I need to scratch, and making this work is gonna finally do it. And sometimes I get close to scratching the itch. Sometimes I'll be satisfied for a couple months, and then I'm yeah, but I could do this, or I could do that, or I could talk about this. And I think trying to traverse that is what makes it a practice and a thing that's cyclical and routine based, and almost ritualistic in that way, because I return to a certain state of being, and then I'm I arise from that and then fall in a way that I think rituals are kind of formatted the same. But I think making work that I'm not particularly against making super political statements, because I think that's fine. I think one of the things that I felt, and Kara Walker has said this, she did this talk some years ago. I think this was 2011. This was shortly after her show at the Met, I think, but before She did Sugar Baby, and like when she did this talk at the Manila Collection in Texas, this was like coming off of the Met show and also off of her making work about Hurricane Katrina at the time. One of the things that she said that I really liked was that she felt that her and her peers, when she had went to school in Atlanta, didn't really feel like she was adequately politically engaged enough. And I think I really relate to that sentiment, because I think that there's like a state of being as a minority where it feels like especially when you see people within your own community be targeted, there's like this like, should I be doing something about this? Should I be engaged with this? What should I do about this? That I tend to feel. And I think that one of the things that I like about my work is that I don't feel like I wouldn't consider myself an activist, and I don't really like the moniker of that, because I think that activism, like, it needs the action, and I don't think making work is action. I think making work is making work. But one of the things that making the work has done for me is that I think that I've been able to take risks in other ways, and I think that what's happening in the work and what's happening in activism is like there's a level of risk and vulnerability that both require. And I think that what has made my work, I feel like timely and relevant and urgent, is because I do take risks. Like, one of my pieces is about like sexual harassment, and when I was making it, some of the people who I spoke to about this are here and were there for when I was like going back and forth about making it, because I was like, I want to be respectful, I want to be kind, but I do want to talk about this. And I think one of the things that I really liked was that my mentor at the time, she was like, you know, there are going to be people who look at your work and see their traumas and are not going to like that. Like, they're going to feel like you're calling them out, and that's not going to feel good to them. It's going to feel like you're picking on them, or like you're doing something to incite a reaction out of them, and it's not going to feel like someone who's thinking about it critically. And then there are other people who are going to like see your work, see their traumas reflected, and really relate to it and feel like, oh, somebody cares about this, like somebody's like invested in this. And I think that that's kind of what I've always wanted. Like, the media that I enjoy is the media that like is able to say all the things that I feel like I can't say, or like I don't feel comfortable saying or safe saying. And I feel like what is nice about the slice of life sort of piece of my practice is that I'm able to talk about the macro through the micro, which I feel like are always in tandem with each other. And that's kind of like what I want to get at. I think that sometimes people have a hard time seeing like the very genteel, like soft, polite version of racism, because they imagine it to be like this very like large, like it's easy to notice it if it's King Kong, but if it's like a random person down the street, it doesn't feel like much. It's like there's a version of it that's very soft and very delicate, and like it works. Like, racism as a structure, sexism as a structure, they all work because there are softer versions of all of them. Like, there's a bigger version that like is like legislation and like, you know, like a larger, more direct violence, and then there's another version of it that just like slowly degrades people over time. And I think that some of what I'm doing in my work, especially like the drawings that are like of the little girls, is me trying to like pinpoint back, like if I were to go back in time and I were to like see like where did this start, I could be like, okay, it started here. And I think being able to do that sometimes like opens up the door for people to be able to see it in their own lives. Like, I'm often sort of accidentally subject to being the practice dummy black person, as I like to call it, like the person that people speak to and like I have all these opinions, because I don't really believe that white people don't have feelings about whiteness. I think they do, I just don't think they're taught to think about them that way. And when I say that, I think a lot of times I end up being the person that a lot of white people are like, oh my god, I'm allowed to think about this. And I'm like, yes, you don't like it either. Nobody likes it either. And I think that like being that person for people, or like being like the first black person that someone experiences, or being the black person that like somebody tries racism on, like out on, is like often it puts you in this situation where you're often explaining why someone is hurting you, but they don't really realize that they're doing it. and like some of the work that I've made is like about that. Like there's one drawing in there which during our thesis like reviews, one of the guest visitor was like, I think people might find this offensive because I have a drawing and it's 2 children in a pool and like this little boy like either shaking or choking or grabbing this little girl. And the title of it is called When I Realized That We Were Cursed for the First Time. And when I made it, I wanted to talk about how like black men have like sort of teetered the line in my life between both being like heroes and villains, and like it was important to me making that piece that like it's not really clear what they are, because I think that like what is so important about like structural forms of oppression is that anybody can take them on, and like there's no like set whatever. And so in making it, she was a little worried that people would find it offensive because I think she thought that people would have a hard time seeing a little girl experience violence. And I was like, imagine how my life must be. I was like, yes. And so you agree. These other things that I've experienced are fucked up. And I was like, I think being able to do that for a lot of people, like they're not used to being challenged by art. They're used to art like coming to a resolution about something, or like asking a question that like has something that they can resolve. And a lot of the questions that I want to ask like don't have a good resolution. Like that piece doesn't really have a good resolution. Like the figures in the background are like alluded to be adults and they're not really doing anything, which is like, it's not like a direct like copy of something. Like it's a version of something that did happen to me in real life, but it's not like directly that. I've like changed it a bit. But like it was very similar to like growing up. Oftentimes a lot of the experiences I had with like other black boys would be like them learning misogyny in real time, and then all of these other adults not really doing anything about that because that's just what they do. And I think that a part of the piece for me was like me trying to come to terms with like, while that was fucked up, they were also children trying to figure things out. And like it is both like me holding these adults accountable, but also trying to forgive myself and trying to forgive them, like trying to forgive the black boys that tormented my childhood, because they are also trying to figure things out. And like having all those different modes of thinking isn't like always the most fun way to think, but it's like, I don't know, it's the most engaging for me. I could just keep talking for an hour because I have a million thoughts. Go ahead.
You mentioned, that I just want to say I never pronounced black women.
Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate your service.
The idea of no resolutions in your work.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're Amani right now,
Mm-hmm.
and you're looking at Amani in the past
Mm-hmm.
to make the work now.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the work has to do with present and past, but I'm wondering, like, how does, if at all, the future fits in, or if, I just thought the idea of no resolutions and like you haven't spoken much about the future, and like not just your future, but like the future of like, black identity or whatever that means within.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, at least with like when I realized that we were cursed, a part of like what I wanted to do with that title was like infer that it was like a cycle that could be repeated in the future, that like it was the thing that happened in the past that would happen in the future, which seems really grim but feels very fitting to me. I think that I don't know, I think that I've kind of accepted that like bigotry has shaped my life and who I am, whether I like it or not, and there's something about it that feels very like cyclical and it's not homey, it just feels like a thing that will be like that I'll return back to at some point, or like will end up rearing its head rather at some point. And I think one of the things that I kind of wanted with the image that we ended up picking for the graphic for the talk, and sort of like the standout piece that was in the thesis show, I know the name of this, I don't need to look it up, I know it because I named it and it's in there. it's totally in there. Something Worth Living For in the Horizon. I think that title for me was like me sort of alluding to like both wanting a good future for little black girls, but also for myself, and like not wanting to like tie blackness down to one thing. I think what is sort of interesting for me and what's hard for me to do in my practice right now is I can't really imagine what my future might look like. I think I have a lot of ideas of what I want, but I have a hard time like thinking through the future. And I think it's kind of always been like that for me. I feel like I've always been like, when I was a kid I had a lot of lofty goals, but I could never like see myself doing it. I was always just like, these are the things that I should get done, but I don't know how the hell that's gonna happen. And then they happened and I was like, okay, I guess I made that happen. And I think one of the things that I think would be cool to think through more in my work is a sort of future. Not because I'm particularly interested in like Afrofuturism, like formal, but I think that it would be nice to imagine a blackness that I can look forward to. And I think when I think about what I'm looking forward to, I feel like it's hard for me to draw that because the thing that I want is a blackness that's not tied up in something else, like something that's like expansive that could mean a bunch of things. And it's like, how do you draw something being expansive without me literally just drawing a bunch of drawings of like horizons and shit? And I already did that once, so I don't really want to do it again. But I've been thinking about it a lot. I think that some of the things that have been really helpful, especially during this time, is like the work that I have made that is relatively positive, I think always opens up the space for me to like plan something else in the future. And I kind of have been thinking about like, you know, the work that I've made as of late is like leans towards being more kind of negative, I guess, but I don't think it'll be like that forever. Like, I went through a phase where I made work that was like super, super positive, and I'm sure that I'll go back to that at some point. I'm just not there yet. And I think that that's what's so hard for me when I'm like writing about my practice and when people ask me to write about it, because I'm like, I'm kind of like at a phase right now, but I'm not like under the impression that I'll be there forever. I think that I'll like migrate to a different state of being, and I also just like want to be able to talk about whatever I want. I've been wanting to make paintings and drawings about the state of my non-existent love life. And I've tried before, but I always end up rage quitting because I'm like, this is just so cringy. But I'm sure that I'll like land on something that feels good, because I feel like there's like stuff to talk about there that I haven't like traversed. But yeah, I don't know. I think that it would be cool to make more work about the future. I just haven't landed on what I think that looks like yet, or how I feel about it yet. Sorry.
Do you think it's more about the experience that gets brewed and then you get to put it on and out in the world? Like, do you think that's how you've been like?
I think so. I think a lot of it also, like, not being able to make work about the future has to do with me struggling to figure out how I feel about things for so long. And like, because that delay happens there, I think it's easier for me to think about things in the past because I've had a lot of time to like settle on a feeling. And I really struggled to be like, this is how I feel about things now. Like, even during like the last couple of months, I'm like, I was happy, I think, but also there feels like something else was there. I don't know. And I feel like I think I just need a lot of time to process things. But I've also kind of integrated that into my life, like very generally, like as my friends who are here can attest. It takes me a long time to make friends. I'm very, very skeptical of people. A lot of it has to do with childhood trauma, but also I think a lot of it has to do with like ADHD. I get really fixated on people and then I get really bored. Not my friends though. It's usually like it usually is like a romantic thing. Like, I'll get really fixated on someone and then they'll do something else and I'm like, oh, I don't really like you anymore. But I think that I'll get like really hyper fixated on things and then I'll like sort of like move off to the other one, and it makes it hard to think through the future. I also have time blindness, which is why I talk for long stretches of time, because I don't feel the passage of time. 5 minutes feels like an hour to me, which is very annoying. And I think that like all of those things in tandem make thinking about the future really hard. But I don't know, I also, sometimes I feel like within art, I feel like Afrofuturism sometimes can feel like a cop-out, because it can feel like a resolution. It can feel like someone fixing a problem without someone else having to like do work or sacrifice to do so. And Ta-Nehisi Coates, he did this interview with this fool, and he did this interview with Ezra Klein, and it was, Ezra Klein is nonsense, chaos. And in it, he was talking to Ezra, and he was saying like, you know, I think a lot of minorities, specifically black people, are under the impression that they've sort of inherited this broken project of freedom and liberation, and that it's a project bigger than them, that they have a small part in, that they will like not live to see like the full result of. And Ezra Klein, as a fool, was like, that sounds fatalist to me. And I was like, of course, you buffoon. But what I feel like that interaction highlights is like, I think that a lot of minorities understand that the fight for the things that they want and the lives that they want to live are ones that require a lot of sacrifice and usually don't happen quickly. And I think that sometimes with Afrofuturism, with art, it feels like skipping to the good part without having to experience any of the bad, which I think is helpful to keep people motivated, and that's nice, and like it has its place, and it's not like, I'm not knocking it. I love Wenguchi Mutu a lot. But one of the things that she's great about is like, while she does make work about post-humanism, she's still, like, it's not like it's not grounded in reality. It's not like it's like, oh, everybody's saved and everything's fixed and no one has to do any work. There's like still a real acknowledgement of like, no, someone needs to do this work. Someone has to like carry the torch of doing this. And I feel like for me, I have a hard time knowing what torch that might be, or like how to hold that, or like what to do with that. Like my parents, I think, like Lorraine Hansberry, she has this play which is very famous, and I'm forgetting the name of it. Kyle, do you know it? He knows it. Yes. And in it, one of the main themes of it is like, you know, trying to, like, these black elders imbuing a younger generation with like hopes and dreams and like hopefully the tools to like create a better world. And I think that like a lot of what I feel within my family is like that sentiment. Like a lot of the people within my family are like, we're gonna fill you up so that you can go and do the thing that we never had the ability to do. And I think that there's something about that that feels hopeful, and I think is reflective and work like Derek Adams or like Wenguchi Mutu, which is nice. But I think that as a like Gen Z black person, I think that there's a hardship there, because it feels like trying to like hold this weight and not knowing what direction to put it in or like what to do exactly with it, because a lot of the methods of like moving things forwards need to drastically change. And it's like, okay, but what method do I need to take to get to the future? And I feel like it's hard for me to parcel that out. Like my family, some of you already know this, my dad wanted to be a rapper, and he is a relatively artistic person. If you're curious, he actually was a decent rapper according to my mom. And my cousins were in a rap group with him. They still rap. I do not listen to their music because they are 50-year-old black men who are truly nonsensical. And in that, I think that like I came from a family of people who are like relatively artistically inclined. Like my parents met and like bonded over music. Which is very interesting. And my dad, despite the fact that my parents, they're divorced and they don't like each other, the one thing that my parents can never ever like fault each other for are their music tastes. Like the two of them both agree that the other one has a great music taste. And they've never changed on that, like within the 27 years I've been alive. Even now, like even in the heat of some of their worst arguments, that sentiment has always remained the same. And I think that there's this appreciation for art and what it can do. And like my dad specifically, like he has listened to the same music on the same iPod shuffle, I'm not joking, for 20 years, and the shit still works. He has socks from the 90s, he can keep anything. And so he listens to a lot of like what would be considered conscious rap. And I think that there's like something about like art and like things relating around the arts being able to like be imbued with like cultural meaning and like passing down like all of these messages, but also this like hope and concern and like being a way, like a mode of storytelling to the youth that is very important to my family, specifically my dad. And I think that it's very interesting because I got into this argument with my dad while he was visiting, because he came for graduation. My dad lives in Texas. He is like, we look very similar. He's not that tall anymore. I feel like he's shrinking, but he's like decently tall. He's like the more socially anxious version of myself. Like he gets really, really anxious about everything all the time. He's been like that since I was a kid. And so when he came, he had a horrible time because like New York is like way too overwhelming for him. And we got into this argument while I was painting my studio because he was like, you get your artistic talent from me. And I was like, get the fuck off the other side of this phone. I was so agitated because I was like, no, I've worked hard for this. I've like done all this work. You haven't like, you do not pay any of my school bills. You've done nothing. You have no business saying that. And he was like, no, but I'm saying like, if I wasn't there, you wouldn't want these things. And I was like, Darnell, you're cooking my grits. Please stop. And so when we had this argument, I was like, this is why I can't talk to this silly man. But I also was like, I think that he really does view like me understanding his values through his music taste. And I do think that like, regardless if I was super conscious of it or not, I think that was his way of being like, let me show you what I'm like without him like actually saying it. Because my dad's like not a particularly emotional person. And so it's weird to like think back on these moments. Like one of my peers in grad school was like, we were coming into class and he was like, our teacher was asking if someone wanted to put on music. Yes, this was Aya's class. And I was like, I can give you music, but I'm going to give you rap music. And one of our peers was like, I don't know if I could listen to rap in the morning. And I was like, I've been listening to rap music at every time of the day or night, every emotion, basically my entire life. Like when I was a kid, we would traverse from like Columbus to Cleveland because my parents were two goofy 20-year-olds who moved to Columbus for whatever fuck reason. And then my grandparents and all my other family lived 2.5 hours away. And so there were many days where we'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and my dad would like drive us to Cleveland. And I remember like listening to CeeLo Green and like Outkast at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Because that's what my dad does. Like that's what he likes. It's what he wants to hear. And then they'd like swap. And my mom would start driving and she'd be listening to like the Roots. Like that's how they roll. And so there's a part of like the arts and like trying to communicate like pain and storytelling that's always been a big part of my life. I answered his question 5 minutes ago, but I felt like it was relevant to say the rest of that. No, it was Katai's question.
I mean, I feel like listening to rap first thing in the morning is a great way to start your day.
That's how I start most of my mornings, honestly.
A good beat, storytelling, you know, I feel like it's good. But I think what's like what you said was really interesting is like, and how it ties in with your parents is how you said that you like are always willing to like have these like conversations with people, and I think that's like so beautiful, and like it really shows through your work, like having like opening up this discussion. And that's like funny what you said about your parents is like they can like hate each other, but like they're still open to each other's like music in that way, and like so yeah, that's, I don't know, I love hearing you talk. We had like coffee, and I thought we were gonna meet for like an hour and a half, and then we ended up meeting for like 4 hours.
Because I just never shut up.
But
I just have too many things to say.
No, it's nice. It gets, you know, it gets me thinking and inspired. Like I literally like wrote in my journal for like an hour when I got home after
That's
meeting
so
you.
nice.
Because
I think it's just because I feel like for a long part of my childhood I was very, very quiet, and so I think I just like sat on all these thoughts and feelings, and then once I got old enough and I was like brave enough to start speaking, I was like, okay, I guess I'll talk. And then I had a job in which I had to talk all the time, and I like kind of had to be the leader, and so I was like, okay, I guess it's okay if I talk as much as I want. And I had a lot of anxiety about talking too much, which I still kind of do, but I've gotten better about being like, well, I guess people get sick of this. They'll just tell me to shut up at some point, and then it'll be fine. But I've had a lot of thoughts and feelings about my work, and I think about it a lot because it's so connected to me.
Yeah. I think we're gonna end this talk soon as it's getting darker, but does anyone have any like last comments, questions, thoughts?
Do you feel any type of way about like Afro-surrealism or no? Like I just watched like I Love Boosters, so I was just thinking
No,
about
I think that it's great. I'm very happy that love Boots Riley. I really love the emergence of that. I haven't personally been doing a lot of Afro-surrealism, but I am excited about it, and I think it opens up a lot of opportunities for like a different presentation of blackness that I think is really cool. Kyle was ragging on Sinners, but I do really love Sinners.
I didn't say it was bad.
I know you didn't. I'm messing with you.
Killers of Sheep is more important than Sinners.
For you.
No.
For you.
Like objectively.
For you.
Sinners is fine.
It was a big deal to me. It was big for me. Yeah, I think that it's great. I feel like, I don't know, I haven't played with like making something like looser or more silly in a while, so maybe I'll do that at some point. I feel like I've kind of been trying to ground things more in reality, because I think that like there's a sort of emotional catharsis, but I do think the like black absurdist sort of comedy of I Love Boosters is really great, and I'm excited to see more of it in the future.
I also think it's crazy how you were like, you're like, yeah, I just graduated, and then like I went like 2 to 3 weeks like not drawing, and like to me that seems like such a short amount of time, where like I feel like after my graduation it took me like 2 months to like, you know, actually like write something or like be productive.
I think it's just because I felt like, I don't know, I mean, some of our peers were like, I'm gonna start working now, and I was like, I don't want to put that pressure on myself, because I think that, I don't know, leaving, I am from the Midwest. I'm very proud to be from the Midwest. I don't know if it's Midwest thing, but we do really, really value routine. And losing routine feels like losing my limbs. Like, I hate the fact that, like so much of the way that I process the world is, like, through certain, like, I have a playlist in which I go home to, and, like, that playlist has been, like, the backbone of, like, the last 2 years. And so when I listen to those songs, I think about like what train stop I would be at if I was going home from SVA, and so it just, I don't know, it rattles me. I like the routine, I like the sameness of it, and I think what's hard about graduating, and what I thought would take longer about it, is like the first time I graduated, I think I really was depressed about leaving for like a full year. Like, I think it was really hard, despite the fact that like my first graduation, like that school, it was a great program, but I went to school with like people from the apocalypse. Those bitches were so fucking evil, and I couldn't wait to get rid of them because they were so terrible. And so I thought that I'd be like, yes, I'm out of here, I'm away from the devils, I'm free. And then I like had this like weird moment of being like, the routineness of this was like really comforting, and it was like really hard to leave. Like, I didn't want to see them anymore, but I just wanted the pattern of action to be there again, and losing it was very difficult for some strange reason. And so I think that because of that, I thought maybe I'd be a little bit more sad about leaving SVA, and I don't necessarily feel sad about school. I think I feel sad about where the world is post-school. I think I'd feel happier if things weren't on fire right now, but I don't know. I think like, I feel for right now, which we'll see if that changes, I feel really satisfied, because I think I had like something very specific in mind for what I wanted my grad school experience to be, and then I think I got it, and I'm like, yeah, I guess that's a good outcome. So I don't know, I thought it was going to be longer, but I also, I don't know, I have a habit of like, when I was in grad school, I was like drawing almost every day, so it feels weird to take breaks, but it's nice to take the break.
Yeah. Does anyone want to add anything? The other post-grad people? No.
Oh. Damn.
Thoughts, Ona? No? Okay, well, thank you, Amani.
Thank you all for coming.
As you can see, I recorded this, so I will post it on YouTube. You can check out my website, which is mothertongueart.com, or you can check out my Instagram, which is mother_tongue_NYC, and there's like all the information. And yeah, I'm excited to listen back to this. And yeah, I'm having another one of these talks July 31st with this artist, Madeline Killam, and she's a painter, and it's going to be at her studio in Bushwick. So yeah, if you guys are interested in joining that conversation, you should come. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'll snag my professionalism. Thank you.
And yeah, check out Amani's Instagram and her website. She has all her work there.
I have things. I make things sometimes.
And have a good evening. Thank you for coming to this part of Brooklyn.